Hello there and welcome to the channel. So in the last video we worked on a travel app and we built the welcome page. That's what you can see here, and in today's video we'll be continuing with the home page. If you haven't watched the first video, I'll leave a link in the description for you to watch, but you can also continue with this and get back to the first video. If you like this kind of content where I break down UIs in Flutter, then please like, share, comment and turn on the bell notification as well. Right, so let's get right into it without wasting time. In the previous video we worked on this page you see here, and when we tap on the get started button, it takes us to the home page, right? And in the home page of my app, I'm having just a simple app bar, and in the body I'm returning a center widget with a text in it. So let's first start with the app bar, right? So in the app bar we are first going to move the elevation of the app bar and then change the background color to be transparent, right? So if you look at the final work, we don't have any background on the app bar, right? It's transparent as the scaffold. So let's just do that, change the background color to colors.transparent, and also we want to change the foreground color to something black, right? Because we don't want our foreground color to be white. Now within our app bar we are going to have the title, and as I explained earlier, the title is going to be a column, right, with some children, and the first child of the title within the column is going to be the greeting, right, which is the good morning text. So when we save, we should have this huge text there, and the second child will be the name of the user, right? So I'm going to put my name there. You can put your name there as well, and realize we are having the name of our user being huge as the same as the good morning text, right? So what we can do is we can style this name, which is the second text, and I'm going to use the style property and access the label medium text style from my theme, right? So instead of manually typing text style, giving it some font size, I'm going to my theme, and then I want the label medium, right? So when I remove the const and I save, this should give me a relatively smaller text. Now you realize that our good morning text and then our name is centered in the middle. I want all of them to be aligned to the left, so within the column we can use the cross axis alignment property and set it to start. So cross axis alignment does start, and that will fix that. Also, when you are developing this on an iOS device, you realize that the title of the app bar is centered by default. So in order to fix that, you would have to set the center title property to false, but on Android it's automatically set to false. Now the next section is going to be the right section, that is going to be our actions. So within the app bar, after the title, I'm going to have my actions, and the actions will contain two icon buttons, right? So an icon button, for now let's set press to an empty function, and then the icon is going to be an icon from the unicorns package. So we added the unicorns package to our pubspec.yaml in the previous video. So unicorns dot search outline, right, and that is going to give us the search icon. Now the next icon will also be an icon button, that is going to be the notifications outline, right? So this is just the basic icons, but if you want the custom icons in the UI I showed, so something like this with a circle around, then we would have to create a custom widget for that, since Flutter doesn't have an outlined icon button. So let's try to do that. Instead of just returning an icon button, let's create a custom widget that's an icon button. So I'll go to my lib folder and create a folder for the widget. So if I can spell widget, and within this folder I'm going to create a file, custom icon button dot, and it's going to be a stateless widget that is going to return a container. Right now, within this container, we are going to have our icon button. And then for now we can set the icon to ionicons.search outline. Now what we are going to use this container for is the border, right? So when I show you the finished project, we'll like to have some borders here, right, around the icon. So that's what we'll be using the container for. So I'm going to the decoration of the container, and this takes a box decoration, right? Now within the box decoration, I'm going to pass in the border property and then border.all. So that will mean I want border all around my child, right? That's the container. So in this case it's going to be the icon button, and within this border.all, by default the color is going to be black, right? And I want to give it a gray color, so I'm going to overwrite the color. So colors.gray, and I want the 300 shade, right? So for now we can't see anything on our screen, and we can't see anything on our screen because we are still using the old icons, right? So let's go back to our home page, and then instead of this icon button, let's replace it with a custom icon button we created. So custom icon button. When we save, realize we have the outline, that's the small border, but it is in a square form, right? So in order to fix that, come to the decoration of the container and change the shape to box shape.circle, and that will fix it. But realize the splash is also coming out of the circle, right? So in order to fix that, come to your icon button, there is a property called splash radius, and change it to a smaller value, right? So I realize 22 work best for most icons, and realize we are now having our icon button having the splash within it, right? Okay, now also we want to change the color of the icon, right? So within the icon button you can use the color property and set it to colors.black 54. So this more like a gray color. And one thing I also want to change is the width of the icon button. It looks too huge for me. So within the icon button there is the constraint property, and it takes a box constraint, but I'm going to the dot tight for, right? That's I just want the constraint for the width, and I'm going to set a constraint of 40. So what that will mean is I'm just constraining the width. I'm setting the width of this icon button to 40, and Flutter will take care of the height automatically. So with that we have a much smaller icon button. And now we don't want our icon button to always be a search outline. We want to make it reusable. So we are going to create a field here for a widget, right? We are going to call it icon, and if I require this in the constructor, then we are going to pass that icon to the icon button, right? Now within our home page we will have an error because we have to pass in the widgets, and now our icon is going to be the icons dot search outline. And when we save, we don't see any change because still the same thing. Now we can duplicate this and use it for the notification as well. So this will be notifications outline, and now we save, we should have these two icons there, but they are close to each other. So in order to fix that, we'll wrap the last one, or any of them. I prefer to wrap the last one in a padding widget and give it some padding. So I don't want the top and right, but I want only the left. So I want to have padding on the left 8 and then right 12. So that will give some space between these two, and also push this icon from the right. So there's our up bar, and then we are done with the up bar. So let's collapse this and move on to our bottom navigation bar. So our bottom navigation bar is just a simple bottom navigation bar, just like any bottom navigation bar you may come across in Flutter. And within the items, we are going to have a bottom navigation bar item, right, which takes an icon, and the first icon is going to be the icons.home outline. So icons.home outline. And when we save, we are going to have an error because we're supposed to have two items in our bottom navigation bar at least. So I'm going to duplicate this and then restart my app because of the error. Okay, we also need a label, right? So that's why we're having an error again. So we need a label for the bottom navigation, and I'm going to give it home for now. And the second one is going to be bookmark. So label bookmark. And now if we hot restart, now we have our bottom navigation bar, right? So let's just duplicate this a couple of times, and yeah, so the next thing is to change the icon names, right? So we will change this third one to ticket and the last one to profile, and also change the icons itself. So the second icon, that is the bookmark icon, will be bookmark outline, and the ticket is going to be ticket outline, and the last one is going to be person outline. So person outline. And when we save, realize we can't see our icon button, but they are actually there. So in order to fix that, within the bottom navigation bar we have the type property, and we can change it to bottom navigation bar type.fixed, and that will fix that for us. And we also want to remove the labels, right? So although you don't want to have the label, you have to still bring it in the bottom navigation bar property. So how we can do that is, within the bottom navigation bar we have the show selected label labels property, and we can set it to false. And we also have another one for show unselected labels, and also set it to false. So that will remove both labels when the bottom navigation is active, when the icon is active, right? So even though the home is active, we still don't have the label. Now that's that for our bottom navigation bar, so we can focus on our home page. So I'm going to collapse this. Then the next thing for us to do is to focus on our home page, that's the body. So within the body we are going to have a list view, right? So we just any scrollable widget will be good for this. I just prefer to use a list view. And then within the children of this list view, we are going to have some items, right? So the first item we have is the location card, and then we will have the categories, that's the tourist places, and then we will have the recommendation sections. So this is going to be the flow of our list view, that's our body. And let's start working on the location card, because our home page is already getting occupied with a lot of, it's already getting filled with a lot of widgets. I want to create this widgets individually in their separate file. So let's come to our widgets file and create the location card widgets. So it's going to be a simple stateless widget, and it's going to be a card instead of a container, right? So let's first return a card, and let's bring our location card into our body in our home page. So I'm going to import the location card, and when we save, we are not seeing anything because there is nothing in our location card. It's just an empty card, right? So the child of this card is going to be a row, because we want to have the image on the left and then the other content on the right. And the first child of this image, row, is going to be an image, right? So image.assets, and I have an image called map, if I'm right, yeah, in my assets. So when I save, we have this huge map on the screen which is overflowing. So we can fix that by giving the image some width. So I'm going to give it a width of 100, and that should fix it, right? Now we realize our card is too close to our body, right? So the way we can fix that is within the list view, we can apply some padding to the list view, and I want to apply a padding of 15 all around. You can use any value like 14. I think even 14 will look good. So a padding of 14 all around, right? And now our card looks good in our list view. So let's continue on our card. Now the next thing is a column, right? So we want to have some text here and another text below it, right? So because of that, we are going to use a column, but we need some space first before that. So a sizer box and give it a width of 10, and then our column. Now within the column, we are going to have some text, right? So the first text will be your location, right? And we realize that it is centered with the image. So in order to fix that, come to your row, and you can set the cross-axis alignment to start, or you can leave it like that, right? But let's finish working on our column first. So let's start location text a bit, and I'm going to use the headline 6 text style from my theme. So using the theme.off context, I can access my theme, that's my text theme, and also access the headline 6, right? And if I move the cons from here, now my text should be huge. Also, I want to change some of the properties of this headline 6, so I'm going to copy it and then change the color to my primary color, right? So I can just directly change this to colors.blue or any color, but I want this particular color to be from my theme, so that in the future if I change my color scheme or anything else, it won't affect my app. I wouldn't have to come all over and then look for where I use blue and change it. So I'm going to use theme.off context, and access my primary color. And now when I save, this should be the blue color. That's our primary color. Also, we want to have some text, that's the location itself. So I'm going to have a sizer box here and then give it a height of 5. Then below it I'm going to have a text, and the text is going to be any location. So I prefer to use United States, New York. And let's style this a bit. So I'm also going to select a text theme. That's a text style from my text theme. So theme.offContext .text theme .label large. And now these two are centered, right? I don't want them to be centered, so I'm going to use the cross axis alignment of the column and set it to start. And also I want to decorate my card a bit. So let's come to the card, and the first thing we want to do is we want to add some padding right within our card. So let's wrap the row in a padding widget and give it a padding all around of 10. And now we have some space within our card. And also within the card we want to set the elevation to 0.4. that's the shadow, right? So we have much lighter shadow, and change the shape as well, right? So you can use the shape property and give it a rounded rectangle border shape, and within this rounded rectangle border shape we can change the border radius of this shape. So I'm going for border radius dot circular and then give it a value of 12. So you can play with this border radius to see which one fits your need, right? So this is our card design, and the next thing after our card is going to be the category section, right? So that's also going to be a separate widget on its own. So let's start working on that. Let's again come to our widgets folder, and then we can create let's say tourist places, right? That, and let's create a simple stateless widget. So I want material. I want to import this from the material. Okay, now this tourist place widget is going to be a list view, right? So list view, not builder but separated. So the list view dot separated is just the same as the builder, but it's going to give us a separator builder. That is something we can use to separate each item in the list view, so each widget in the list view, right? We don't have to wrap each item separately by a padding widget or a sizer box. We can just do that in the separator builder. Now in the item builder we want to pass in a function that returns a chip, right, with some label. For now just put a text there and then maybe say random for now. Now within the separator builder, that's what we want to use to separate our items. We are going to return a padding widget for the spacing, and then give it a padding of only right, so only right of 10. So that's what we'll be using to separate our item, that's our chips. And the item count for now is just going to be 4, but this is going to be dynamic very soon. Also we want to change the list view scrolling axis, that the scrolling direction, to axis dot horizontal, because we want to scroll this way and not the default way. Now one problem we will encounter when you use list views within a list view, that's our main page is a scrollable widget and this section of our app is also scrollable. So this will cause problems in Flutter. I want to show you how to fix it, but before that, let's first look at how this will look like. So in the home page, before after the location card, we can add some sizer box for spacing, so height of 15, 15, and then we can use our tourist places widget. But when we save, we are going to get an error saying something like, yeah, so horizontal viewport was given unbounded height, right? Viewport expanding, blah 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 blah. So how to fix this is, come to your tourist place, that's your list view widget, and you can either use a property known as, if I can find that property here, shrink wrap, and set it to true. And now this should fix that error, but shrink wrap is a little bit expensive. So if you want another alternative, what you can do is you can wrap this list view in a sizer box and give it a fixed height, right? So by doing that, the list view knows its boundaries. So I'm going to wrap this in a sizer box and give it a height of 40, and I'm going to hot restart my app. And when I come to a get started page, I should have this, right? And if I increase the item count to somewhere like 8, realize we can scroll, so we can scroll this, right? And I want to change the scrolling behavior, so I can do that to the physics and then change the physics to bouncing scroll physics. So this will give the IES style of scrolling. It will bounce off when it reaches the end, right? Now instead of this chip being just a label of text random, let's first create a model for our category section, right? And then style our chip as well. So I'm going to create a folder in my lib folder called models, and within this models folder, I'm going to create tourist places model dot, right? Now this tourist places model is going to be a simple model, so it's going to be a class that will have two fields. So within our chip, we want to have an image and a text, right? So final string name and then final string image, and let's require this. Okay, now let's create a list of tourist place models that we will loop through and return a tourist place, right? So just below the class, I'm going to create a list of tourist place models and call it tourist places. And now this is going to be a tourist place model, right, which has a name like mountain and then an image like a mountain image. So that's the images within our assets, that's the icons. So assets slash icons slash mountain, right? And this is how they are all going to be. So I'm going to duplicate this a few more times and change the second one to beach. Now we have our tourist place models, and we can now use it in our UI. So instead of just returning a chip here and our item count being 8,
our item count is now going to be our tourist places dot length, right? That's the number of tourist places we have. And as you can see, we now have few of them, or if we have to start our app, this is going to work. But within our chip, we want to have a label and an avatar, right? So we already have the label. The next thing is the avatar, and this is going to be a circle avatar. And if I save, you realize all our chips now have the blue circle avatar. But we want to change the background image, right, to an asset image, and then pass in our asset. Now our asset is going to come from the tourist places model. So you realize in the tourist places model, each model has a name and then an image. So we are going to access the tourist places, the index.image, right, and remove the cons from here. So this will give us each image from the tourist places, right? Because with the list view, we are looping over the tourist places, and then for each tourist place, we are accessing the index and then its image, and then giving it to the circle avatar. So if I save this, realize we now have images for each of our circle, our chip. We have images for each of the chips. And now instead of the text being random, we are just going to do the same for the text as well. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and now change this to name. And now we have our category section, that's our tourist places. Now let's style our chip a bit. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change the background color to a white color, right? So like white. And I want to also change the elevation, that's the shadow we have on the chip, to 0.4. That will give it a little bit of elevation so that it stands out from the scaffold background color. And I also want to change the shape. So shape, and give it the rounded rectangle border shape, and apply some border radius to that shape. So it's just going to be the same radius as our card. So border radius dot circular, and pass in the value of 12. And now our chip is a little bit rounded, or more rounded, and that completes our tourist places section. So when we look at the finished project, the next section is the recommendation section, and let's work on that. So I'm going to close all the windows and open the home page. So after our tourist places, we want to first have a row, right? And let's first copy this sizer box because we want to have some spacing, and then give it a height of 10 instead of 15. So we want to have a row, and we have to move the cons from here as well, with some children, right? Now the first child of this row is going to be a normal text that says recommendation. And now within the style of this text, we are going to have our headline 6 text style. So I'm going to access our headline 6, and now when I save, we should have the recommendation text there. And next is going to be a text button. For now, the on press is going to be an empty function, and the child of this text button is going to be a text. with view all. Right, so now they are going to be close together, and we can use the main axis alignment of the row to space them out. So I'm going for main axis alignment dot space between, and this will space both. This will give a space between the recommendation and then the view all button. Right, now we can have our recommendation section. So after the categories, our recommendation section, and now let's create a widget for that. So within our widgets folder, let's create recommended places that, and now this is going to be a simple stateless widget, just like all our widgets have been. And as we saw in the demo, that's a scrollable widget, just like widget, right? Just like our category section here, so our tourist places here. So the first child is going to be a sizer box, because I want to constrain the list view we'll be using here, right? And give it a height of 235. So there's a height I tested with, right? So just a random height. I saw that it works best with my design. And the child is going to be a list view that's separated, so just like what we had earlier on for this section, right? And the item border will return as a card for now. And in the item count, we can put something like 5, but we also create a model for this recommended place. So the separator border, just like previously, so going to be a padding widget, and it's going to return a padding that's only to the right of 10, right? So we are going to separate each card by a padding of 10. Now we want all our cards to be of the same width and height, right? So we are going to wrap this card in a sizer box and give it a fixed width. So let's wrap with sizer box and give this sizer box a width of 220. That's a width I chose. I saw that it works best with my design. And now let's use this recommended places widget in our home page. So I'm going to put a sizer box here and just give it a height of 10, right? So just the same sizer box here. I'm going to copy it and paste it here and give it a height of 10. Now we can put our recommended places widgets here, and when we say we have nothing showing, let's see why. Let's give let's change the scroll direction. So scroll direction to axis dot horizontal, and now our cards are showing, right? So just like previously. Also I want to have the bouncing effect on our list view, so I'm going to the physics and set it to bouncing scroll physics, and this will make sure that when we over scroll it bounces off but doesn't give that glow effect. So let's start working on our recommendation section. And in our card, the first thing I want to have is reduce the elevation, right? So just like we did previously, we can move the elevation. And if you are working on a big project, I recommend you do all this configuration on your team so that you don't have to manually be removing elevation and changing shapes as you work on your widget, right? So also I'm going to copy in the shape, just like the shape we've had previously, and this is going to give us a rounded shape, right? Now the child of our card is going to be an ink wall widget. So what this will do is it will give us this pressing effect, right? So like we are pressing on something like a button, right? So if I set it on top, you can really get what I'm trying to say. I remove the cons from the sizer box. So when we tap on this card, we get this button effect, ink splash effect, if I'm right. And I realize the shape of our splash is not the same as our card, right? So our splash is more like a square, or I don't know how to call this shape, but our button our card is more rounded. So in order to fix that, we have to give the same border radius to this ink wall as well. So the ink wall has a border radius property, and we can set it to border radius the circular and pass in 12, just the same as our card. And when we tap on it, everything should fit and look well. Now let's work on our recommendation card. So I'm going to collapse this, and within the ink wall we are going to have a child, right? And the child of this ink wall is going to be a column widget. Now within the column we are going to have an image, right? So image.assets, and for now I'm going to use one of the images from my assets, image assets places, and place1.jpg. And when I save, I should have this huge image which overflows. So how we can fix that is I'm going to use the height property and set it to 150, and now it fits well, but the image looks a little bit off. So I'm going to set the width to fill the entire card, and also set the fit to box fit that cover. And now our image fits our card, but we don't want our image to touch the edges of our card. So we are going to wrap our column in a pattern widget. Thus we don't want anything in our card, that's whether the image or the text, to touch the edges of the card. So I'm wrapping it in a column in a pattern widget, and I'm giving it a value of 10. And I realize our card is having some space at the edges, and I also want to round this image. So I'm going to wrap the image in a widget called clip rect, and then give it a border radius. So border radius dot circular and passing 12. So this will round the image and then give us this effect, right? Now the next thing is to have the location and the star. So I'm going to use a sizer box just after the image. So within the column, just after this image, I'm going to collapse the image and have a sizer box of height 5. So just some small sizer box for spacing. And the next thing is going to be a row with some children, right? And the first child is going to be the location. So when we look at the finished project, we have the location, the star, sorry, the name, the star, and then the location, right? So there is going to be a row, and then there's also going to be a row, but they are all in a column, right? So let's set this. The first child of this is going to be a text, right? That's just the location. Sorry, I keep saying location, the name. So for now I'm just going to use a random name, just like I used at first. And I'm going to style this a bit, right? So within the style, sorry, in the text, I'm going to have a text style, and then change the font size to 14, and I think that's the default, so maybe you would have to bump it up a bit. 15 will look good. And also change the font weight to bold. Right, now the next thing is going to be the icon, that's the star icon. So just after the text within this row, we are going to have the icon, and then I'm going to have icons dot star, and we should have this black star here. It's too huge, so we can use the size property to reduce it to somewhere 14, and also change the color. So I'm going to change the color to a yellow color, but I want the shade 700 because the default yellow is too bright. And the next thing is to have the text, that's the actual rating. So I'm going to have a normal text, and maybe for now I can just put in 4.4, and it looks too huge, so let's reduce the font size to 14. Sorry, 14 is still the default, so 12 will reduce it a bit, right? And now these two are together, we're using space between here, we'll space out these three items. So if we want to push that's these two, the star and its value, to the left, the best widget will be a spacer widget. So I'm going to use a spacer widget here, and that will push the text and how do you call it, the icon to the right. Now the next thing after that is going to be, so I'm going to collapse this row, and the next thing is also going to be another row, but first a sizer box of height 5 for spacing, and then a row with some children. So the first child of this row is going to be an icon, and just like we did for the first one, so an icon, and this icon is going to be the locations icon, right? And the color is going to be our primary color, and the size is going to be 16, so just like we did for this star icon, and some sizer box for spacing, and then we have our text. So that's going to be the actual location. So this is just a random text, not necessarily associated with this image, and we can reduce the font size a bit. So style, text style, font size, and set it to 12. Now this is the design for our card. So every card is going to have this design, but we want our card to be dynamic. So let's create a model for our card just like we did for our categories, that's the tourist places. So I'm going to my model folder and I'm going to create a recommended places model. So new file, recommended places model, and this is just going to be a class, a simple class, recommended places or place model, yeah, and it's going to have an image. So the image for the place is also going to have a rating, and it's going to have a location as well. Now let's generate the constructor for this class, and let's have a list of recommended places. So let's recommended place model, and then we can call it recommended places, and it's going to be a recommended place model for each one. So the image is going to be assets slash places slash place 5.jpg. That's the first one. The rating is going to be 4.4, and the location is just some random location. So for now I'm just using a dummy location, just like the one we have, right? We are going to have multiple of these, so I'm going to copy these ones in because they are just the same thing. And so this is going to be our recommended places, and now let's replace that in our UI. So let's come to our recommended places, and in our list view they're separated. That's our item count is not going to be 5, but it's going to be our recommended places dot length. And also, instead of having the image hard coded here, it's going to be from our recommended places the index dot image. So when we save, realize you have our images changing, right? So that's each image for our recommended place, and after that we are going to replace the text over here. That's the name of the place, right? In our model we didn't create a name, right, because I just left this dummy, and this is just a simple project. So if you're working on a real project, you may have this data coming from an API or your database, wherever, right? So we are going to leave this stuffs the same, but to get a concept of creating the models and looping over them to get dynamic data in your UI, right? So after the home page, the next section of this is going to be the nearby from you place, right, which is a little bit complex. So let's work on that. So I'm going to create another widget. So after our recommended places, we can have a size box of height 10, and I'm going to create another widget in my widgets called nearby places. And this nearby places is going to be first a column. So it's going to be a column because as we saw, it's just a column with some cards, right? So it's going to be a column, and then the children of this column will be the cards we saw in the demo. So I'm going to use list.generate to generate some dummy cars for now for the design purpose. So I'm going to give it a length of 4, and then in the generator function we are going to return our UI, right? So the first thing we are going to return is a sizer box, and then give it a height of 135, which is just a height I came by myself. So just a height I chose and works my design. And then the width will be double.max finite, and the child of this sizer box will be our card, right? And our elevation will be set to 0.4 as usual. Now let's see, let's place this in our UI. So in the home page we are going to copy this row, right, and then change the recommendation to nearby from you, and we can now have another sizer box here after the row, and finally put our nearby places widget here. So when we save, realize we have 4 cars here, and we also have this glow effect when we over scroll our list view. So within our primary list view we can come here and change the physics to bouncing scroll physics, right, and that will make sure our UI bounces when it's over scrolled. Now let's work on our nearby places. So within our card, as usual, I want to change the shape to rounded rectangle border with some border radius, right? So if I move the const from here, and we also want to have much spacing between our cards, so I'm going to wrap the sizer box in a padding widget, and I'm going to give it a padding of only bottom and a value of 10. So that will give much space between our cards. And now the first child of our card, the child of our card is going to be an ink wall, because we still want to have the button effect when we press on our card, right? So a tappable card, and our ink wall, that's our splash, is rectangular, so we can change the shape with the border radius property, right? So I just copied the border radius from our card and then pasted it on our ink wall, right? And now that should fix that problem. And the next thing we want to have is a row, right? So we want to have a row where we have the image here and some column where we have our extra data, that's our text and other stuffs. So the first child is going to be, that the child of the ink wall is going to be a row, right? So a row with some children, right? But let's wrap this row in a padding widget, because we don't want any parts of this row, that's the text or image, to touch the edges of our card. So we are wrapping the row in a padding widget. And now when we see, we're not going to see any effect because we don't have anything in our card yet. But the first thing we are going to have in our card is going to be an image, right? So image.asset, and we can access any of the places in our asset. So asset slash places slash place 6.jpg, and when I save, we have this weird looking image. We can fix it by changing the width and height. So we first want the height to be full, So double dot max finite, that's take all the available space for the height, and we want also to have a width of 130, right? And we want to change the fit to box fit dot cover, right? Now I also want to round this image a bit, just like we did previously with the recommendation section. So I'm going to wrap this image in a clip rect widget, clip rect, and then give it a border radius of 12. So I'm going to copy this border radius and paste it here, and we now have this image being rounded, right? So the next thing is to have a column, but first have some spacing. So I'm going to collapse the image and then put some size box here of width 10, right? And then have a column. Now within this column we are going to have a text, right? So a text, that's the name of this place, and I'm going to put just a dummy name there, so Sea of Peace. And let's style this text a bit. So within the style tag I'm going to set a text style, sorry, not tag, I mean the style property. I'm going to set a text style and then give it a font size of 16 and then a font weight of bold. Right, now the next thing is another text, right? So when we look at the UI, we have the text, that's the name of the place, and have another subtext there. So they're just going to be a normal text without any styles. So just below it we have a text, and realize our text has shifted to the right, or is centered, right? So within the column you can set the cross axis alignment to start, and that will fix that fast. And the next thing is to have this UI, right, with this distance UI. So that's the Accra to Kumasi, that's the current location to the destination of this place with this effect. So let's first we'll create a separate widget for this, because the design for this is a little bit complex and it may make our UI clustered. So let's first put some size box there and then give it a height of 10. Now the next thing will be the distance widget. So let's create a distance widget. Within our widgets I'll create the distance dot that, and this distance widget will be a stateless widget. So just a normal stateless widget, but it's going to return a row, and the children of this row will first the first child of this row will be an icon. That's, if I show you the demo, that's going to be this icon, that's
the icon before the user's location, right? So the locate icon, and this is going to be the location icon, right? So that's going to be the first child of the row, and it's an icon, and the icon is ionicorns dot locate outline, right? And now after that icon, we are going to have the text, that's the starting location, right? But let's change the color of this icon, right? So the color is going to be colors dot black 54, and the size is going to be 14 for the icon. And after that, we are going to have the text, which is the start location. For now, I'm going to write Accra, and also it will have some styling. So the style is going to be a text style, and the color will be the same color as the icon. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it here. Now we are going to have those dots. So those dots we are going to have these dots, right? And the way I created these dots, I used a container, right, and then some little calculation. So let me show you how to create those dots. So my app is no longer run. Let me run it again. How I created those dots, I used a container, but first let's create some space. So size a box and give it a width of 3. Now since this row, the children of this row is expecting a widget, I want to have multiple instances of this container. I'm going to use the list.generate, right? So list.generate, and then passing the length 18. That's the number of dots I want to have, and within the function, that's the generator function, I'm going to return a container. Now this is complaining the the elements type list container can be assigned to a type list widget. So we have to spread this, and then putting the 3 dots before the list generate will spread out all these widgets into the row, so that this doesn't become a list on its own. And within the container, it's first going to have a height of just 2. That's a very short height. And the color is, if the index is odd, right, then I want to have a transparent color, else I want to have a color dot black 54. So what this will do is for the first, that's so one is the index 0 is we don't really know whether a 0 is even or odd, but let's say starting from 1. So 1 is odd, and it will appear as there is no dash there. 2 is even, so 2 will have a dash of black 54. 3 is odd, so it will have a color of transparent, and that will create this effect where there is a dash, the next dash is transparent, so it seems like there is no dash. There is another dash, the next one is transparent, so it seems like there is no dash there, right? So the next thing after this, and we want to make the container fill the entire space, right? So we have to wrap it in a widget called expanded, and this will make sure that our dots fill out the entire space up to where there is a text, right? So if after this text and after the last text, our dots should fill out the entire space, the remaining space. And
After this list.generate, we are going to have a sizer box for some space, and also give it a width of 3, and then we are going to have the location icon, right? So I'm going to bring that in. So it's just location outline icon, give it a size of 14, and change the color to our primary color, that's the blue color, just like we did here. And also I'm going to give some space, some little space. So copy the sizer box, paste it here, and then give it a width of 2. Then we can have our end location, right? So for now I'm just going to type in Kumasi and style this a bit. Now the color of this is going to be our primary color, so I'm going to copy this and then paste it. And this is what it takes to create that distance widget here. And now if we want to use it in our code, we first have to wrap our column in another expanded widget, otherwise we are going to have a flex error, right? So if I put the distance widgets here and I save, realize we are having a flex error, a constraint error. So we first have to wrap our column in an expanded widget, and that will fix that error. And I realize we have these dots with the text Accra and then Kumasi, everything aligned well, right? Now let's work on the next thing, that's the star and then the price, right? So the last thing is going to be this star and then this price. So after the distance widget, right, I want to push everything down. I don't want to just give a fixed space, that's a sizer box of maybe a space 20 or whatever. I just want to push everything down, right? So I'm going to use a spacer widget after the distance, and that'll push everything down. And the next child is going to be a row, right? So we are going to have this row which has the icon and this text, right? So we are going to have a row, and if I move the const, and the children of this row, within the children property, we are going to have an icon, right? So just the star icon be using, and icons.star, and so this will give us the huge black star, and I can change the size and then the color just like we did previously. So when I change the color and then the size, we have this small icon here, and we also want to have the text, that's the rating. So just after the icon, we are going to have the text rating of 4.5 and then a font size of 12. Now we want to have the text here, that's the $22 per person, or the price for this particular place. And because we have more than 2 items in this row, we can't use the main axis alignment space between, right? So I'm going to put a spacer widget here, so that will just give a space between the left and right side of this row. And instead of how I'm going to create that design, that's the $22 per person design here, yes, I'm going to use a widget called rich text. right? So rich text can help us make this kind of text where you have one sentence or a text, but they are styled differently. So let's look at how that works. So after the space, I'm going to have a rich text, and this rich text expects a text which is of type text span, right? So inline text, but a text span is an inline text, and this text span expects a style. So within the style property, I'm going to pass in a text style. That text style will have a font size of 20 and a color of our primary color. Right, and if I go to the work what we are working on, we can't see anything because we don't actually have any text yet. So within our text span, we can have a text, right? And this text is going to be the 22, right? So the 22 text, and as you can see, we have the 22 there. And now we want to have another text, right? So after the text, we can have children, and this children will also take another text span. So just like nesting of text spans, right? So text span, and they're also going to have style and text, just like what we have over here, right? So this text span will have some style, and the style is going to be a text style, and font size of 12. Now we're also going to change the color to colors.black 54. Now we need the actual text. So after the style, we can have the text, and then the text is going to be per person, right? And now we have this $22 per person design. So the last thing for us to do is to make these images dynamic, and just like we did for the rest of the designs, right? That's the widgets. I'm going to copy that model in. So it's just going to be a simple model. We are just changing the images, right? So let me create it from scratch. So nearby places model, and let's assume it's just going to be an image because we are not changing much of the details here. So a class of nearby model, and for now we are just changing the image, right? So if it's an actual project, we may be changing a lot of these properties, and can have a list of nearby place model and call it nearby places. Now within this nearby place model, we have our image, and now I'm going to copy the images in because they are just simple images. So I'm going to copy this one in and also duplicate this and places 6 5 4 3 2 1. Right, now we can use our nearby places model here. So where we are looping, The length can be our nearby places dot length, and our image can be our nearby places index image. So nearby places index dot image. And now we have dynamic images for our nearby places section. So that's the end for this video, and the concept of this video was to teach you how to build UIs in Flutter from scratch, and not actually implement a fully functioning traveling app, right? So if you like this video, you learned something from it, it has taught you one or two stuff you didn't know previously, then please smash the like button, subscribe, share and comment as well. I have more of these videos coming up, and I'll need your help in order to do that. So please kindly share the video, like and subscribe as well, and I'll see you in the next one.